At Intel, world-changing ideas start with real solutions, and real solutions start with exceptional engineering. The quantum computing revolution, the next generation of AI experts, the renewable energy grid, early diagnosis for cancer. The examples are countless. The impacts are endless. But the foundation is always the same. It starts with Intel. Learn more at intel.com/stories.
Today on CityCast Portland, we're talking about why the city is slashing matching funds for candidates, the new Robocop patrolling downtown, and why Target might have been fibbing about theft leading to store closures. Joining me on this week's News Roundup are CityCast's Digital Strategy Director, Bryan Vance, and our very own producer, Giulia Fiaoni. It's Friday, December 22nd. I'm John Notarianni, in for Claudia Meza, and this is what Portland's talking about. Bryan, Giulia, thanks for being here on the last News Roundup of the year.
Yes, thanks, John.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us.
So good to be here.
So in honor of the fact we are right at the end of the year, I wanted to take a minute and hear from you guys about your Portland New Year's resolutions. Like, what are you going to be doing in 2024 in relation to the city? I can go first. I've been thinking about it. In 2024, I'm going to try and get out of St. John's a little bit more than I have. I feel like I'm still kind of in pandemic mode where, like, love my neighborhood. I'm sure y'all have heard us talking about St. John's all the time on the show. But
y'all really need an endorsement deal with the St. John's Neighborhood Association.
I know, right? But like, yeah, I just want to spend some more time in like other places around the city.
Lots of cool bars and restaurants out here, John. So plenty of excuses to make your way out.
Yeah, you're going to have to show
to
me
the
around.
Far East.
I'm totally going to take you up on that, man. Yeah. What about you guys?
I am terrible at resolution. Like, I just don't do them. I was telling Giulia before we started recording, like, I'm not even a New Year's Eve person. I'm like, it's just a day to me. But I do think one thing that I want to do a bit more in 2024 is sort of related to what you're saying, John. I want to ride more public transit. And I know that sounds really weird, but like, we're a one-car household. I work from home. So, you know, I'm often without the car anyway. And that's kind of left me to, like you said, John, sticking to my neighborhood.
For sure.
And yeah, I mean, I took the Max train back from the doctor the other day, and I was like, oh yeah, this is actually really convenient and kind of fun, even though it's a little bit dirty and weird and whatnot. And I just really want to take TriMet more because it really is one of the better transit systems in the world. It's so much more expensive everywhere else.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Mine's also transportation based. I am setting the ambitious goal of getting myself a bike by the time summer rolls around.
Yeah.
I don't have a car. I'm already all up in the public transportation world, but I would love to be a part of those Pedalpalooza events. They always look like so much fun. So hopefully by summertime, I'll be able to join in on that and just see the city in a new way.
Oh, I love that. Bryan, I know that you're a big cyclist as well. So let's set the goal now. Let's all ride our bikes to somewhere mid to late summer.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Totally on board with that.
It's such a fun way to see the city. I mean, y'all had Earl Blumenauer on recently, and he wasn't wrong in saying that, like, it's just a different way to experience Portland. Like,
Totally.
You're going a bit slower than a car, but faster than on foot, so you can cover more ground, and it's just really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much, you guys. Let's get into the news of the week. Bryan, do you want to start us off? What have you been looking at?
Yeah, so my story is from Alex Zielinski at OPB. It's about the public campaign financing system in Portland and how it is out of money. Like, there's this interesting thing going on in Portland in that we are, and actually all of Oregon, like, we're flush with cash, but we're also broke as hell. Like, you know, we're having a record kicker, but also we can't fund our education system. And like, this is really playing out at the Portland level too. Like, we have all these recent bond measures and levies that have passed that are just flush with cash. But then you look at something like this, you know, public campaign financing system that is short $5.4 million just to make the minimum amount of matching funds for all the candidates. The big thing is it coincides with we're drastically expanding our government. So, you know, last election cycle, only 7 people participated in this program, which basically you have to pledge that you won't accept any individual donations to your campaign of over $350. And if you do that, the city will match the first $20 of every donation at a 9-to-1 rate. So basically you can turn a $20 donation into $200. Mm-hmm. Only 7 people participated in 2022. Over 40 people are already signed up for this. Yeah. For this election cycle.
And it's early. There's going to be a lot more than that.
So there's going to be way more. And because of the way that the new government works, because, before it was at-large elections, you were voting citywide, fewer positions, more money could be involved. Well, now the whole system is set up to encourage candidates who don't necessarily have a lot of financial backing, and we don't have the money to support them. And it's just, it's infuriating.
It is really frustrating. And this is something that I fear will muddy the water more. Like you pointed out, the sheer amount of people running already makes it difficult for possible viable candidates to stand out. But then you slap on a 60% reduction in funds, and that creates a whole other barrier for candidates with fewer resources to get their word out. And it really works against what I feel like the hopes of the city are right now.
Yeah.
The thing that drives me crazy about this is that the city knew this was coming, right? They were talking about this back in
they
June.
kept going to city council saying, "Hey, could you give us a little bit of money now because this is coming up?"
Yeah, like 6 months ago, there were these news stories of being like, "Well, we got this great new system, but there's not enough money, so it's not like it's a surprise." And Bryan, my understanding is that it is just because of this big surge in the size of the government, right? This isn't going to be a perennial problem.
Right. Theoretically, this wouldn't be a problem because, one of the things that's happening with this new switch over to the government is all the positions are being elected in 2024. Mm-hmm. But then, the way it'll work is that some of the people will be elected to shorter terms so that we're only ever voting for 6 city councilors at a time instead of all 12.
Oh, that's helpful to know.
So, yeah. So, part of this is it's a one-time thing, but it's also fundamentally, I have a real problem with the people who are on the current city council getting to decide how this works because it's in their benefit to not, make this really, really work. And we've seen every step of the way, whether it's Renee Gonzalez wanting to gut the charter reform or Dan Ryan, coming in the back door and trying to change it. They are doing everything in their power to sabotage this switch over to a new government. And it's they're not even hiding it. It is so obvious.
Yeah. Giulia, to what you were saying about how this makes it more difficult for certain candidates, the detail that really sort of crystallized this in my mind, in terms of running for council, there's a number of thresholds that you can meet for different types of funding from this program. And this story said that people who are counting on $300,000 from this program at the current rate could get about $120,000.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine planning a $300,000 campaign and then being actually,
you're getting less than half.
you got less than half of that. And they did say that that there could be more money that is getting pumped into this program, right? But we're not going to know until way later in the spring, which I think that there's a lot of programs that if they say we're gonna figure it out in a couple months, will work. But not during an election year. And not when it's funding that election, not when people are planning for a campaign that is going to happen towards the end of the year.
It's just American politicians have this real knack for pushing things to the last possible moment. We see this at the federal government all the time. We're always on the verge of a government shutdown. And it's just such a terrible way to run any business, government, nonprofit. Why they all think that this is the way to operate is mind-boggling.
Mm-hmm. Bryan, did you have a sense of why the city is in this budget crunch right now?
So, it's because we have this really weird system in Oregon. And it's not just Portland. We pass a lot of legislation through ballot measures. Yeah. And ballot measures are typically written with a very narrow scope of focus. You look at Measure 110. Measure 110 was to tackle drug convictions, drug addiction, things like that. And we pass these measures that have this very narrow scope of focus, and then that means that the funding for it is earmarked only for that thing. Mm-hmm. The government can only use that money for that thing. So we see the Portland Clean Energy Fund, which is bringing in so much money, way more money than they ever expected. But because the way that law was written, because it was a ballot measure, that money can only be used for very specific things. And so it winds up that we have things like at the same time that clean energy fund, which is supposed to help with like climate resilience, is literally swimming in hundreds of millions of dollars of excess cash. Renee Gonzalez is floating an $800 million bond measure to help keep the fire department running. We have the money. Like, they could just get the money. Like, why do we need to pass a new tax for every single thing? And we're terrible at also like envisioning how much money we're going to bring in. I mean, that's what's going on with the kicker. The state economists really underestimated how much money we would bring in and how much money the government would have to work with for their budget. And so they have to send like $5 billion back to taxpayers because we're just terrible at guessing this stuff.
Julia, I see you just shaking your head.
Oh, gosh, hearing you talk about this, Bryan, this reminds me a lot of the roadblocks that people ran into when they were looking to rebuild Jefferson High School right at the start. They were hoping to use the college buildings across the street, but because of zoning laws, they are only allowed to use those buildings for certain things. And to add to that, hoping to build affordable housing downtown, you can only build up to a certain amount of stories high.
I remember that developer.
In certain areas because of these very specific limiting zoning laws. This feels like a perennial problem in our city government.
We're a city of like rule followers, and we love rules. We love to like put rules on everything. But then we're like such sticklers to following the rules that even when like all common sense and all logic says like, no, you could actually do that, even though it's not spelled out in the letter of the law, we're like, our hands are tied. Like we can't do anything. We tied
our own hands behind our backs.
We did it to ourselves. We did it to ourselves. That's the most infuriating part. Like, we are so full of people who really just want to do the right thing that we often don't stop and think about the consequences of the measures we pass or, the policies that city council, hands down. And like, if people would just stop and think through the long term, we wouldn't be in these messes.
Oh my gosh. All right, you guys, we are one story in, and I feel like we're already getting kind of hot under the collar. We're going to take a time out. Let's take a break.
Water break.
Drink a glass of water, and then come back and talk about more news of the week.
I want to tell you one of the coolest gifts someone got for me. A few Christmases ago, my partner bought us both OMSI memberships. And it was so much fun. Like every OMSI After Dark, we make it a date night. And I even still have my pint glasses from Brewfest. And right now through January 7th, OMSI memberships are 15% off, on top of invitations to member-only events and discounts or even free passes for things like OMSI After Dark. There's always an exciting exhibit to experience. Like right now, you can learn all about our favorite yacht destroyers, at Orcas, Our Shared Future, or learn about the animal kingdom's coolest methods of self-defense at Staying Alive, Defenses of the Animal Kingdom. And let's not forget that a membership also gets you admission to their mainstay attractions like the planetarium and the USS Blueback, which is a real submarine you can explore. So spark your family's curiosity at OMSI, where there's adventure for visitors of all ages. Learn more at omsi.edu. That's omsi.edu. Look, we all know dating sucks. But what if I were to tell you I know of a less annoying way to meet a bunch of potential suitors of your desired sexual orientation and gender expression? I gotta win some kind of Portland award for that sentence. Anyhow, Lovely Dating is offering a new and better way to speed date. Their events are designed to feel casual, low pressure, and make connecting with singles in real life as fun and easy as possible. For one, the meetups are hosted at charming local venues like coffee shops and breweries. I think one meetup was even at a kava bar, and there's no weird host or name tags. Participants use descriptors like what you're wearing to find each other and receive fun text prompts throughout. And after each date, you can discreetly match or not. If a match is mutual, Lovely takes care of the rest. Could not be easier. So sign up and get dates at lovelydating.com. That's LUVVLY dating.com. That's LUVVLY dating.com.
All right, Julia, what story did you have your eye on this week?
So my headline comes from Anthony Effinger from Willamette Week. He's looking into the new autonomous security robot patrolling the U.S. Bancorp Tower on the west side, better known as Big Pink. So I'll tell you a little bit about this robot. His name is Rob. 5'4". Yeah. 420 pounds and shaped
like a dating profile for Rob the robot.
A chonker.
I'm really trying to sell him to you guys right now, but he's shaped like the top half of a rocket ship. That's my easiest way to describe it.
Okay.
But Effinger reports that Rob has multiple cameras giving 360-degree visibility, heat sensors to detect threats, and a two-way intercom system to connect passerby or perpetrators with human security teams. He also said that it can read hundreds of license plates in a minute and, quote, can be programmed to keep an eye out for known baddies, according to what the company has said.
That's terrifying.
But it's not the first of its kind in the Portland metro area. There are two other Effinger mentions, one in Gresham at a Legacy Health hospital, and another patrolling the Aloft Hotel at Cascade Station. And there are possibly more out there, but before I go any further, I want to hear both of your initial reactions to Rob.
Rob the Robocop.
Yeah, exactly. That's where I was going. I saw Robocop at a young and impressionable age, and I'm glad that we have finally made it to the future that had been promised to us.
It's a few decades late, but it's here.
Oh, that's so funny. So from Effinger's article, he had pointed out that he himself was poking around on Reddit trying to get a sense of what Portlanders were saying. So I did that as well.
Yeah.
And I want to read some of my favorite comments to you guys.
Please.
First one being, quote, I'm a boring, even-tempered, law-abiding citizen, and I instantly want to vandalize and damage that thing upon seeing it, which is so relatable. I feel exactly the same way.
It's happened in other cities, by the way.
Oh,
There's one of these in another city, and there's a photo going around of it. Someone pushed it into a fountain, and it's just like laying on its side in a fountain.
No doubt. So a few others being, quote, I want to put googly eyes on it, followed by, I want to put a frilly dress on it, followed by, I want to throw it in the river. Ooh. So lots of extreme takes on Rob's fate. But one last thing I'll mention that Effinger also pointed out was that over the past year, Nightscope Inc., the California company that made Rob, has lost millions and its stock price has tanked tremendously, indicating that these robots are probably not going to be taking over anytime soon. Although
they're doomed.
The CEO of Nightscope believes otherwise, stating earlier just this year, quote, the robots are coming and we're growing, and quote, the market for crime will never collapse. So that's where we're at with this one.
Oh my God.
I mean, he's not wrong there.
This is such a dystopia. I mean, all joking aside, like that it can read hundreds of license plates, that it can keep an eye out, quote unquote, for baddies. I mean, that sounds like surveillance and facial recognition technology, you know, which is like super, super screwed up. You know, Portland does have a ban on the use of facial recognition technology in public places, but like just the idea that we are creating these systems that are able to have this mobile mass surveillance is really, really scary to me.
Yeah.
You know, you combine that with like the fact that the city of Portland has been doing pilots on drone programs over the course of the last
why
year.
do the police need drones?
I just like, it is something that I think we should be really worried about and that we shouldn't be in favor of. Like,
Well, I'm curious, what do y'all think about like speed cameras and red light cameras though? Because I'll admit, I didn't always used to be this way, but I'm very pro speed cameras and red light cameras, if for no other reason than to catch the cop who just like runs a red light. I mean, I'm literally sitting next to a PPB supervisor at 82nd Division last night, and the sign says no turn on red, and he just turns on red.
Rips it.
You know, like, wouldn't it be great if we could give him a ticket? Or the UPS driver that I saw that just like floored it through a red light again around 82nd Division. Very fatal area for traffic collisions.
I mean, when it comes to that, because there is such a narrow focus as to why that camera is there, why that system exists to address a certain issue, I don't feel as uncomfortable with it rather than Rob is just out wheeling around 360-degree camera angles, catching you doing whatever.
Checking your body temperature.
Yeah, like seeing if you have a fever, I guess. But I am also the type of person that I don't have a super strong social media presence. I sometimes will choose not to watch Black Mirror late at night because it makes me feel paranoid. And this is something, anytime I see these types of things, it's immediately upsetting and concerning. So I'm a bit on the extreme end of being more precious about that stuff.
There was a news story of like either a very similar or the same robot being deployed in Times Square in New York. And an article that I was reading about it was talking about this group called Surveillance Technology Oversight Project, or STOP as their acronym. And their whole premise is that like a lot of these types of mass surveillance have a disproportionate impact on like Muslim Americans, immigrants, the LGBTQ plus community, you know, especially like anti-Black policing. So to your question, Bryan, like I don't have a problem with this sort of technology in theory, but like the way that it is used just has a real tendency to be super discriminatory in terms of who those cameras are being pointed at.
It's also like when we let big tech make the rules and create all this stuff, like it's not in your best interest. We've seen this with social media. We've seen this with name anything that big tech's been involved. And right now it's, you know, medium-sized tech, but with the goals of being big tech driving this. It's not your city council. It's not even your like state police force. It's some California tech startup that wants to do this.
And Giulia, I'm sorry to fact check you, but I think you did leave out one of the more important points, which is whether or not it can be thrown in the river.
Pretty damn heavy. I would love to see someone try.
420 pounds. I've heard from other Redditors I was reading on that the best thing would be to get really angry, somehow get it on its side and start rolling it down to the river. It's the best way.
Yeah, it's kind of round. You know what it actually reminds me of? I'm not a big Doctor Who fan, but I've seen enough episodes to know the Daleks. It looks sort of like a nicer, friendlier version, but like if you know what a Dalek is, like that should still terrify you. Like you should be like, no, I'm good. I don't want this thing around me.
Yeah.
Well, lucky for you, Giulia, I did some research.
Oh, no.
So,
tell me what you know, John.
So, according to the internet, the average, beginner deadlifter, which I think would be the movement to like get this thing up and like into the river.
Oh yeah, you gotta lift with your legs there. You know,
168 pounds for men and 88 pounds for women is like the average beginner like deadlift threshold. You know, I mean, and no judgment on the three of us, but like I don't think that any of us are like star power lifters.
Can I tell you something, John? I actually deadlift 162.
Fuck yeah. Okay. So
we can do it. The three of us. We're good. We can do this.
Not to show off
even
or
at that
anything.
beginner threshold, you know what that comes out to? 424 pounds. So if our buddy the robot is 420, we're good. We can get that sucker in the river. No problem.
It's an experiment.
Oh yeah, and we have our
science.
New Year's
It's for
resolution
science.
now is to
There
get that
we
thing
go.
down to the river.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much for walking us through that, Giulia. Well, the story that I had my eye on is actually from CNBC. Gabriel Fonrouge is the reporter who put this one together. And it is all about our dear departed Target locations. Y'all might remember back in September, Target said that they were shutting down 9 locations across the country, including 3 in Portland, the Portland Galleria, as well as the Powell and Hollywood stores. But they said explicitly that shoplifting and organized retail crime was the reason that they were closing down these stores. Here's a quote from Target. In this case, we cannot continue operating these stores because theft and organized retail crime are threatening the safety of our team and guests and contributing to unsustainable business performance. Well, at the time, we were all sort of like, that sounds fishy.
Yeah, a little too neat.
Well, this week, CNBC did an investigation, found that like crime is worse at other locations that were kept open near those stores. And it sort of broke it down city by city, including here in Portland. The Portland Galleria over a 2-year period had 73 incidents. The Hollywood store had 175 incidents, which is nothing to sniff at.
Yeah.
But the Target by the airport had 318 incidents. And the one like right off of 205 had 718
That one.
incidents.
Let me tell you about that
of
one.
crime.
Holy cow.
So like, not to say that there is no problem with retail theft in America, but the idea that these stores are closing down because of that, like clearly total bullshit. Yeah.
Yeah. it makes sense that as a business, you're not going to come out and say, like, we made a bad business decision. But that's really what it was. Like, a lot of these were very small footprint Target stores that didn't offer the things that everyone normally goes to Target for.
Yeah.
And, you know, maybe you do have less of a threshold to survive shrinkage, you know, like retail theft, things just breaking, going bad. But, like, that's not the reason you close those stores. You close those stores because they were losing money because they were a terrible business decision. The idea did not work.
Yeah.
And so to blame it, to capitalize on like this fear of crime that, by the way, is overblown, because if you actually look at historical crime statistics, we're like still way below like highs in the 80s and 90s. I don't like it when people co-opt stories to paint a negative narrative. It's like classic misinformation.
Yeah. And I will say it's not just a Portland problem. Like, this article pointed out, the same thing happened in New York, in Seattle, and San Francisco, and like a bunch of other cities.
Yeah, I will say I do wonder how much the amount of security they had at these small format city locations played into those total numbers of incidences, because I know personally I live near what was the Hollywood location, and it was decked out with security cameras. There was a huge security car parked out front. The shelves were locked, and there were security personnel. And it was certainly uncomfortable to be around. I remember one of the last times I was in there, I had to ask somebody to unlock a case to buy a $2 tube of toothpaste. So,
Giulia, did you see any robots when you were there?
Was Rob patrolling?
I want to say that was next. I mean, I saw these security measures be put in probably about a year and a half ago. So I'm not disclosing that I've ever stolen anything from Target, but I have given myself a 2-for-1 deal in the self-checkout line on certain items. And I will say it's never in those small format city locations. It's always in those huge suburb stores. So just a note for you, Target.
Giulia, are you the cause of rampant retail theft in Portland?
Giulia's why we can't have nice things.
Let's not focus on this, okay?
Candy bar.
But if we had a cashier checking Giulia out, that would have been
I wouldn't dare. I wouldn't dare.
Oh my God.
Well, here's the thing, though. On a more serious note, and I know, John, you pointed this out, that this is not just a Portland issue, but I do really despise how these types of corporate political stunts are like especially impactful right now, because it fuels this Portland is burning fire with a bunch of half-truths. And it's just unproductive and really unfair to the businesses surrounding those areas and the residents in those areas who are working really hard to bring life into the city and take care of one another. It's just this broad, sweeping stroke of lack of safety and crime in a way that isn't even true.
Yeah. I mean, and this is the same thing that we saw happen with Walmart and REI and Starbucks and Nike over the course of the last year.
Yeah, Nike, an Oregon-born business, is playing into this shit.
Yeah. Well, now that those Target locations have closed, what should we put there? What do you guys think?
Oh, man.
So the one on Powell was a bowling
alley.
I was going to say,
I was just
want
talking
a
with a
bowling
friend
alley.
about the bowling alley.
Bring it back. We don't have
just
enough.
A bowling alley.
Just like simple,
We've got like 2 in Portland now. Just, I don't know, like, should be easy to do.
Yeah.
It's not that hard. So that one definitely a bowling alley.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot about how, like, you know, back in like the 1970s and 80s, we had all these empty industrial spaces that then turned into lofts and like spaces for artists, and like big box stores are the like empty industrial space of the 2020s.
They are.
You know, I love the idea of in like 5 years, like every ex Target and Best Buy is just like some sort of crazy like art commune.
Like, just imagine if that Walmart was an art commune.
where they like have like shows and like half pipes and like just like wild stuff going on. Well, guys, thanks for breaking down the news of the week with me, and thank you for breaking down the news all year long. It's been really fun having you guys on the show and sort of chewing the fat on everything that's been going on. So thanks a lot.
Thanks, John. It's always a pleasure to be here.
Thanks. See you guys in the new year.
See you next year.
Bye.
Well, that's all for us this week here on CityCast Portland, but thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed the show, why not tell a friend about it or leave us a rating or a review? Our producers this week were Giulia Fiaoni, Dylan Brogan, and Lizzie Goldsmith. Our newsletter editor is Rachel Monahan, and our host is Claudia Meza. I'm executive producer John Notarianni. Original music by Jenny Conley and Stephen Drisos. Additional music by Epidemic Sound and All the Kimonos. We're taking Monday off for the holiday, but we'll be back on Tuesday morning with a lot more from around the city. Until then, see you at Slim's.